Space, a brand new chart for the head and for the heart. It's your journey, your tools.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are really tearing down what might be the single most persistent and honestly destructive myth in modern relationships.
Which one is that?
The idea that healthy partnerships are, or even should be, completely conflict-free.
Ah, yes. The big one.
Exactly. If you find yourself, avoiding those tough conversations, maybe believing that the absence of arguing equals happiness, well, our sources suggest you're not actually striving for health. You're often just sort of guaranteeing resentment down the line.
That's the critical pivot point, isn't it? I mean, the consensus across, well, all the research we looked at is pretty clear. The absence of conflict is often a giant flashing red flag.
Red flag, why?
Because it signals that grievances, needs, maybe painful truths are being left unspoken. And that just allows resentment to build up and, fester over time. Conflict is basically inevitable. Anytime you have two humans sharing space, resources, life, it's going to happen. But when it's navigated constructively, and that's the key, it's actually a powerful catalyst for growth, for diversity of thought, even for, believe it or not, greater creativity in a partnership.
So our mission today, it's ambitious. We want to give you a complete blueprint, a way to transform disagreement from like a destructive battlefield.
Which is how it often feels.
Totally. Into more of a collaborative building ground. We are deep diving into this idea of fair fighting. It's a comprehensive, structured methodology, and it's entirely focused on respect, communication, and collaboration.
And the foundational premise here, it requires a radical mental shift, really radical. You have to move away from viewing conflict as this competitive zero-sum game.
Winner takes all.
Exactly. Which, let's be honest, is kind of how we're naturally wired to approach perceived threats, right? Fight or flight. The objective of fair fighting, it's explicitly defined as peace, not victory.
Peace, not victory. I like that.
Well, yeah. The goal isn't for you to win the argument and your partner to lose. The goal is for the relationship itself to emerge stronger, more understood, more resilient after the challenge.
And we actually have hard data showing why this investment of effort really matters. Constructive engagement, it leads to tangible, positive benefits.
Like what, specifically?
Well, dramatically higher marital satisfaction for one, a greater sense of being deeply heard and understood by your partner. And for those listening who have children, successfully modeling these conflict resolution skills, it leads to positive developmental outcomes right there in the household.
So conflict, when done right, is actually how you prove the relational bond is resilient.
Yeah.
You test it and it holds.
Precisely. So to give you the actionable tools you need to make this shift, we've structured this DICE into 5 core parts.
Okay, lay it out for us.
We'll start with the foundational pillars. These are about building psychological safety. Then we'll analyze the destructive patterns we absolutely have to eliminate. Think Gottman's horseman.
Ah, yes, the classics.
Then we'll examine the different strategic conflict styles we tend to adopt. After that, we move into necessary emotional interventions for those really high-stress moments.
Right.
And finally, we'll give you a concrete 5-step resolution process you can, put into practice immediately.
Sounds like a solid plan. Let's get into it.
Good, let's start with the absolute bedrock.
Yeah.
When we engage in conflict, the primary obstacle isn't usually the actual topic, right? Like the dishes or being late. It's the perception of threat.
Exactly. Our sort of primitive brain registers disagreement as social danger. Could be rejection, could be attack. And that instantly triggers the fight or flight response.
And that shuts everything down.
Pretty much. It shuts down the parts of the brain responsible for empathy, rational thought, collaboration, the good stuff you need. So these pillars we're covering now are tools designed specifically to mitigate that threat response, to keep the thinking brain online.
We need to override biology with structure.
Precisely. And the first, most critical pillar is learning the language of self-disclosure and personal responsibility. It's the art of the I statement.
The I statement. Heard of it?
Yeah, everyone's heard of it, but the goal is simple. Execution is tricky. You want to shift the focus entirely from blaming your partner's character or actions.
The you always or you never.
Exactly those. Shift from that to disclosing your own internal feelings and experience. If you do it correctly, this minimizes defensiveness. It turns what could feel like an attack into, ideally, an invitation for empathy.
Okay, but this is where we need to get really specific, because I think people think they know what an I statement is, but they often mess it up. They add, like, a veiled criticism right after I feel.
Oh, constantly.
Like, is I feel like you don't care about me an effective I statement?
Absolutely not. That's a perfect example of what not to do. That's actually a global judgment disguised as a feeling.
Ah.
A true feeling statement uses a primary observable emotion. I feel hurt. I feel frustrated. I feel anxious. When you say, I feel like, or I feel that, you are almost always about to deliver a critical opinion about your partner's intentions or their character.
Got it. So the sources break this down. There are 4 essential required parts to make this tool actually work, right? To make it threat reducing.
That's right. 4 distinct components.
Let's break those down slowly. First, you start with the observation. And this has to be neutral, factual, describing the specific external behavior, avoiding all judgment or accusation.
Right. Give us an example. What's a good observation versus a bad one?
Okay, good. When I see mail piled up on the counter for 3 days, that's just factual, what a camera would see.
Okay.
Bad observation. When you procrastinate and make a mess with the mail, see? That's already attributing a negative trait, procrastination, messiness. You got to stick to just the facts.
Just the facts. Okay, number 2.
Second is the feeling. This is the clear identification of that primary emotion we just talked about. I feel X, Y, or Z. And this takes some self-awareness, doesn't it? You have to actually identify the specific emotion underneath maybe the surface irritation or anger.
Yes, absolutely. And often the immediate emotion that comes up is anger, right? But usually underneath that anger, there's something softer, more vulnerable, like hurt or worry or maybe disappointment.
And connecting with that is more effective.
Far more effective at pulling in empathy from your partner. Sharing vulnerability tends to invite connection, whereas anger often invites defensiveness.
Okay. Third part. This is where it gets deeper, I think. The impact or reason. You connect the specific behavior you observe to a personal consequence or an unmet need. Starts with because. And explains why that action affects your emotional life or maybe your practical life.
Right. So using the mail example, because it makes me feel like my concerns about keeping the house tidy aren't a priority. Or maybe because it means I have less clear space to work when I get home. This step is critical because it anchors the conversation firmly in your experience, not your partner's supposed failure.
You're explaining your operating system, not diagnosing theirs.
Beautifully put, exactly. And finally, the 4th part, the need or request. This is the positive, actionable alternative. It's what you actually want to happen next. What I need is, or I would really appreciate it if we could. This completes the communication loop by offering a clear path forward, not just complaining, but requesting a change.
Okay, let's put it all together. Let's take a common scenario. Instead of the destructive character attacking, you were so irresponsible with money, we were always broke, which guarantees a fight.
Guarantees it.
How does that translate using the 4-part formula?
Okay, so it would sound something like this. When I see the bank account balance drop below our agreed upon threshold, that's the observation, I feel anxious and scared, that's the feeling, because it makes me worry about our financial security long-term impact reason. What I need is for us to sit down together once a week, maybe Sunday nights, and just review our budget together need request.
Wow. The difference is huge. The first one is just an attack, guaranteed to trigger defensiveness. The second one, it's like an invitation to a collaborative meeting to solve a shared problem.
Exactly. That structural shift is massive.
Right.
Okay, so pillar number 2, equally crucial for building that safety net, active listening.
Right. And this isn't just, being quiet while the other person talks.
Not at all. It's a conscious effort, physical, psychological, to really hear and truly understand the complete message being sent, both the words and the feelings behind them, and critically to communicate that understanding back to the speaker.
This practice, it communicates profound respect, doesn't it? And respect is like the ultimate de-escalator in conflict.
It really is. When the speaker genuinely feels heard and validated, their nervous system literally starts to calm down. Their emotional arousal drops. And that makes them infinitely more receptive to hearing your side later on.
Okay, so how do we do active listening? The sources mention 6 key techniques.
Yes. 6 practical steps. First, and this sounds incredibly basic, but it's often the first thing to go out the window in a fight. Pay attention.
Put the phone down.
Put the phone down. Eliminate distractions. Use nonverbal cues, nodding, leaning in slightly, maintaining appropriate eye contact. You're basically demonstrating with your body that the speaker and their message are your sole focus right now.
Okay. Second, this sounds harder. Withhold judgment.
This is the psychologically demanding part, absolutely. You have to consciously suspend your immediate counter-arguments, your criticisms, your rebuttals, your yeah buts. You are trying to create psychological safety. If you're busy formulating your response while they're still speaking, you are fundamentally not listening. You're just waiting for your turn to talk.
Guilty as charged sometimes. Okay, third technique.
This is maybe the operational gold standard of active listening. Reflect and validate. First, you paraphrase what they said in your own words. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you felt completely abandoned when I canceled our date last minute.
Checking for understanding.
Precisely. Then you validate their emotions. And I can absolutely see why that would leave you feeling frustrated and maybe unimportant.
Now, I think we need to really hammer this distinction home, because this is where people get stuck, right? Validating is not the same as agreeing.
Crucial distinction. Absolutely crucial. You are simply acknowledging the reality and the legitimacy of their emotional experience, regardless of whether you agree with their interpretation of the facts or the action that caused it.
So you can say, it makes sense you felt hurt when I was late, even if you think your lateness was totally unavoidable.
Exactly. You're validating the impact on them, not necessarily conceding that you were wrong or that the lateness was unjustified in your view. You're saying your feelings are valid given how you experience that. That validation is incredibly powerful for de-escalation.
Okay. What are the last three techniques? Quickly.
Right. Clarify. Ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions to dig deeper. Things like, can you tell me more about what that was like for you? Then summarize, periodically restate the main points and feelings you've heard to ensure you're both aligned. Okay, so the key things seem to be X and Y, and you're feeling Z about it. Do I have that right? And finally, number 6 is share. You only present your own perspective after your partner confirms, genuinely confirms, that they feel fully heard and understood.
That structure makes so much sense. You're basically ensuring you are speaking into a receptive, calm nervous system, not just adding fuel to the fire. Okay, third pillar, setting the tone, specifically the gentle startup.
Yes, the sources repeatedly stress this. The first 3 minutes, sometimes even the first few seconds of a conflict discussion often predict its entire outcome. Starting gently basically inoculates the conversation against that immediate threat response.
So what does a gentle startup actually sound like?
It's soft, it's respectful, it's free of any blame or character assassination. It typically combines that in a statement language we discussed with a positive need or a request for collaboration. It's the direct opposite of a harsh startup.
Which just slams the door shut immediately.
Right. Triggers instant defensiveness. So you want to replace that harsh, maybe global judgment like, you never take initiative around the house and I'm sick and tired of nagging you.
Yeah, that sounds familiar in households everywhere.
Doesn't it? Replace that with the gentle startup. Hey, I've been feeling really stressed about the household workload lately, I statement feeling, and I would love it if we could find maybe 5 minutes this afternoon just to sit down and divide up the tasks differently so I can feel a bit more supported positive need request.
Notice the difference there. The gentle approach expresses a need and a desire for partnership, whereas the harsh one is just an accusation of failure.
Exactly. And the final pillar in this foundational section on building safety is the principle of specificity and focus.
Okay. This is about fighting the urge to do what?
Fighting the disastrous habit known as kitchen sinking.
Kitchen sinking. Sounds messy.
It is messy. It's the conflict equivalent of like opening up a drawer full of every single grudge you've ever held and just dumping the entire contents onto the table.
Oh dear.
Yeah. People overwhelm the conversation. They start throwing in every past grievance, unrelated problems. And speaking of you being late, remember 3 years ago at my cousin's wedding when it completely derails things.
Because you can't solve everything at once.
Exactly. It shifts the focus from solving one specific, potentially solvable problem right now to this generalized, paralyzing feeling that everything is wrong and nothing will ever get fixed.
So the rule has to be, stick to the current issue. And critically, avoid those sweeping generalizations, those absolute terms like always and never.
Oh, those words are poison in conflict. They don't just attack a specific behavior, they attack the person's character. Let's be real, they are almost never factually accurate.
Right, nobody always does anything.
Right. Exactly. When you tell your partner you're always late, You force them into defending their entire identity. They have to start listing every single time they were on time just to prove you wrong, instead of focusing on the impact of this specific instance of lateness.
So use concrete language instead.
Yes. Instead of, "You're always late," try, "I felt stressed and embarrassed when you arrived an hour late to our friend's dinner last Friday." See? That makes the behavior a solvable event, not an immutable, unchangeable personality flaw.
That reframing is key. It keeps the problem manageable.
Okay, so we've built the foundation with the constructive pillars. Now we need to transition and look at the destructive wrecking balls, the things that tear relationships down.
And for this, we're turning to Dr. John Gottman's famous work, right? The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
That's right. These are 4 specific behaviors, and their consistent, unrepaired presence is so toxic, so damaging, that Gottman's research found they can predict relationship dissolution divorce, basically with alarming accuracy. Scary stuff.
Wow. So understanding these isn't just about, like, labeling bad behavior.
No, it's much deeper than that. It's about recognizing the symptoms of a deeper relational rot that requires very intentional repair. Okay, the first horseman is criticism.
We touched on this a bit when differentiating it from a complaint, but let's really nail down the difference again.
Okay. Criticism is that global attack on character, it sounds like. You're so selfish, you're lazy, you're inconsiderate. It's a generalization about who the person is.
Whereas a complaint is specific.
Exactly. A complaint focuses on a specific behavior. "I was frustrated when you didn't take out the trash this morning, like we agreed." See the difference? The first one attacks who they are. The second addresses what they did or didn't do.
And that global attack, the criticism, it just immediately triggers that threat response we talked about.
Yeah. Instantly.
Yeah.
And sets off the defensive countercycle. So the antidote, it's what we began with, the gentle startup and I statements. You have to catch that impulse to criticize and consciously translate it into a specific complaint, free of blame, using that 4-part formula we practiced.
Okay, makes sense. Horseman number 2, contempt. Now, the sources are unanimous on this one. This is the most destructive of the 4. The single greatest predictor of relationship failure. Why? Why is contempt so much worse than just criticism?
Because contempt isn't just saying you did something wrong. Contempt is fundamentally an expression of superiority. It conveys disgust, profound disrespect. It essentially says, you are beneath me and you disgust me.
Ouch. That's harsh.
It's incredibly harsh. We see it physically, too. Eye-rolling, sneering, using hostile humor or sarcasm, mocking the person, outright name-calling. It is literal poison to a relationship because it actively and consistently erodes the foundational culture of fondness and admiration that holds the whole thing together.
Fondness and admiration. You need that.
You absolutely need it. Contempt signals that the partner is not valued, not respected, and that feels like an irreparable assault on trust and safety.
So if contempt is the poison, what's the antidote? It must be pretty powerful.
It is, but it's not a quick fix you apply during the conflict. The antidote requires a long-term fundamental shift in perspective, building a culture of appreciation.
So this is something you do outside of conflict, proactively.
Exactly. It's preventative medicine for the relationship. You have to intentionally shift your internal filter, your focus, to actively look for positives in your partner and in the relationship. And then this is key, regularly express genuine gratitude and admiration for them.
Like building up an emotional bank account.
That's a perfect analogy. You build up such a thick, positive emotional buffer that when a conflict inevitably arises, the occasional expression of frustration or a specific complaint doesn't immediately trigger this catastrophic contempt spiral.
So practical examples.
Simple things. Saying thank you for mundane tasks they do. Pointing out a character trait you genuinely admire. I really appreciate how patient you were with the kids today. Making small, positive comments daily. It retrains your brain and strengthens the relationship's immune system against contempt.
Okay, horseman number 3, defensiveness. This one feels almost universal. It's probably the most common response when we feel criticized, right?
Absolutely. It feels like a natural reflex, but the research is crystal clear. It is utterly ineffective because defensiveness is fundamentally just a form of blame shifting. It's an attempt to avoid accountability for our part.
How does it usually show up?
It typically manifests in 2 main ways. Either the counterattack, well, I wouldn't be late if you didn't take so long getting ready.
Right, turning it back on them.
Exactly. Or it shows up as victimhood. Why are you always picking on me? I feel like I can't do anything right around here. Both of those approaches completely derail the conversation. They invalidate the partner's initial concern, and they just escalate the blame cycle. Nobody learns anything. Nobody takes responsibility.
It feels so natural to defend yourself, especially if you feel unfairly attacked. But you're saying it just guarantees the conflict won't actually get resolved.
It guarantees it. Defensiveness is like throwing fuel on the fire. The simple but incredibly powerful antidote is taking responsibility.
Even just a little bit.
Even just a tiny bit. This doesn't mean you have to grovel or concede that you are 100% wrong. You are simply acknowledging some validity in your partner's reality, in their perspective. A simple phrase like, you know what, you have a point there, or, okay, I can see my part in this, can instantly de-escalate the tension.
Why does that work so well?
Because it interrupts that attack-defense cycle. It shows you're willing to listen, to be influenced, to not just stonewall or counterattack. It signals partnership again.
Which brings us neatly to the fourth horseman, stonewalling. What does that look like?
Stonewalling is when a listener basically withdraws from the interaction. They shut down. It can be physical, like literally leaving the room or turning away, or it can be emotional, giving the silent treatment, avoiding eye contact, offering maybe monosyllabic grunts instead of responses, just disengagement.
And this one is tricky, isn't it? Because it might not feel aggressive like contempt, but it's still deeply damaging.
Very damaging. And it's critical to understand why it happens. Stonewalling usually isn't intended to be malicious or punitive, though it feels that way. It's often an unconscious attempt at self-preservation. It happens when the person feels flooded.
Flooded, we'll get more into that later, but basically physiologically overwhelmed.
Exactly. Overwhelmed by stress hormones, their system is overloaded, and shutting down feels like the only way to cope. But, and this is the crucial part for the partner experiencing the stonewalling, it feels like profound abandonment. Like you don't care.
Which just makes them more desperate to connect or get a reaction.
Yeah. Precisely. It creates this incredibly destructive chase and withdraw pattern. One person pursues, feeling abandoned. The other withdraws, feeling overwhelmed. It's a downward spiral.
So since stonewalling is often a physical reaction to being flooded, the antidote has to address that physical reality.
It does. The antidote is twofold. Physiological self-soothing and taking a structured break. You need to learn to recognize the physical signs of flooding in yourself, the racing heart, the hot face, the tension, and immediately, respectfully call a timeout.
Not just storming out, but a structured break.
A structured, agreed-upon break. And this break, as the sources specify, must be for a minimum duration, usually at least 20 minutes.
20 minutes? Why so long?
Because that's roughly how long it takes for the stress hormones, like cortisol and adrenaline, to metabolize and actually clear out of your bloodstream enough for your rational brain to come back online. Mm-hmm. A quick 5-minute cooling off period isn't enough. Your body is still physiologically aroused, and you'll likely just jump right back into the fight.
Okay, that makes sense. We'll definitely cover the break protocol in more detail later. Beyond the main four horsemen, are there other toxic tactics we should be aware of?
Yes, the sources mention a few others worth briefly highlighting. There's just general blaming, which is that constant evasion of personal accountability for anything.
Pointing fingers.
Always pointing fingers. Then there's making threats, using the relationship's stability or finances or even the kids as a bargaining chip. This injects fear and insecurity right into the core of the relationship. Very damaging.
And one that sounds particularly nasty, hitting below the belt.
Oh, yes. This is exploiting intimate vulnerabilities, things shared in confidence, maybe past traumas or insecurities, specifically to inflict pain during an argument. It's a massive betrayal of trust.
And maybe passive aggression, that indirect expression of resentment.
Absolutely. Things like sulking, giving the silent treatment with punitive intent, different from a structured timeout, making sarcastic digs disguised as jokes. It fosters confusion, mistrust, and prevents direct resolution.
Wow. Okay, so knowing these patterns, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, and these other tactics, is step one. And the antidotes give you a tangible, immediate response when you recognize them happening, either in yourself or your partner.
Exactly. If you catch yourself criticizing, you force yourself to shift to an I statement and a gentle startup. If you feel that wave of defensiveness rising, you make yourself find just 1% of the responsibility to take. The rules become your safety manual for navigating conflict without crashing the relationship.
Okay, so we've looked at the building blocks and the wrecking balls in the moment. Now let's shift perspective a bit and look at broader conflict strategy. How do we generally approach disagreements?
Right. For this, we can look at a really useful framework, the Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument, or the TKI model. It helps you understand not just how you tend to fight, but maybe why you choose those methods. It maps conflict styles across two central dimensions.
And those two dimensions are?
First is assertiveness. This measures how much you prioritize trying to satisfy your own concerns, your own needs in the conflict.
Okay, looking out for number 1.
To put it simply, yes. The second dimension is cooperativeness. This measures how much you prioritize trying to satisfy the other person's concerns and needs.
Ah, okay. Self versus other focus.
Basically, yes. And the fundamental insight from this model, the really key takeaway, is that no single style is inherently the best one. Effectiveness in conflict requires flexibility.
So it's not about always being assertive or always being cooperative.
No. If you always default to just one style, let's say you always avoid conflict, you're low on both dimensions, you're going to fail miserably in situations that actually require healthy confrontation or standing up for your needs. You need to be able to consciously choose the style that best fits the specific context, the stakes of the disagreement, and the importance of the relationship versus the issue itself.
Okay, let's break down the 5 styles that emerge from combining these two dimensions. Where should we start? Maybe the most forceful one.
Let's start there. That's the competing style. This one is high on assertiveness, but low on cooperativeness.
So high focus on self, low focus on other.
Exactly. The motto here is essentially, I win, you lose.
Sounds pretty aggressive.
It can be. This style uses whatever power is available, authority, position, maybe argument skill, sometimes even aggression, to achieve a clear victory for oneself, regardless of the impact on the other person or the relationship. In a relational context, using this style frequently is often destructive.
Why? What are the costs?
The costs are usually strained relationships, significant resentment from the person who lost, and a breakdown of trust and collaboration over time. However,
There's a however.
there is. Competing can be strategically appropriate, even necessary, in very specific, often high-stakes situations. Think of an emergency where a quick unilateral decision is absolutely needed for safety. Or maybe when you're standing up for a crucial ethical principle that is simply non-negotiable for you.
So it's effective only when preserving the relationship harmony is clearly secondary to achieving that immediate critical goal.
Precisely. Use with caution in personal relationships. Okay, next style. Accommodating. This is the direct opposite of competing.
So low on assertiveness, high on cooperativeness.
Exactly. Low focus on self, high focus on the other. The motto here is basically, I lose, you win. Or maybe, whatever you want is fine.
Just giving in to keep the peace.
Essentially, yes. It involves neglecting your own needs, desires, and concerns in favor of satisfying the other person's, often just to avoid conflict or tension in the moment. While it might seem selfless or like you're being the nice guy,
There's a downside.
there's a big downside if it becomes your chronic default style. Accommodation, used excessively, leads to a dangerous buildup of personal resentment. You feel unseen, unheard. It can lead to emotional exhaustion, burnout, and it creates an unhealthy power imbalance in the relationship.
Because your needs aren't actually going away, are they?
Not at all. The needs you sacrifice don't vanish. They just get suppressed, turn inward, and often become toxic over time, poisoning your feelings about the relationship or the other person. We often accommodate on minor things like, where do you want to eat? And that's fine. It becomes problematic when we accommodate on core values or important needs repeatedly.
Okay, what's next?
Then there is avoiding. This style is low on both dimensions. Low assertiveness, low cooperativeness.
So not trying to satisfy self or other, just out.
Pretty much. The motto is effectively, I lose, you lose, because the conflict doesn't get resolved for anyone. This involves ignoring the conflict, sidestepping the issue, maybe making excuses to postpone the discussion indefinitely, or just completely withdrawing emotionally or physically whenever conflict arises.
Is there ever a good time for avoiding?
Well, strategically avoiding can sometimes be useful, actually. It can buy you time, perhaps allow strong emotional heat to dissipate before you attempt to engage more constructively later. This links back to our structured timeout protocol, right? A temporary avoidance for self-regulation.
Okay, temporary tactical avoidance.
Yes, but as a default, chronic style, it's profoundly destructive. Why? Because problems don't get solved. They just fester and often grow larger. And critically, from your partner's perspective, your avoidance signals a profound lack of care. It tells them you don't care about them, you don't care about the issue, or you don't care about the future of the relationship enough to engage. They perceive you as checked out, indifferent.
That makes sense. Okay, 2 more styles less. What's number 4?
Number 4 is compromising. This one sits right in the middle. Intermediate on both assertiveness and cooperativeness.
Meeting in the middle.
Kind of. The motto is, I win some, you win some. Or maybe, let's split the difference. It seeks a quick, mutually acceptable solution where both parties give up a little bit of ground to find a workable middle path.
Sounds practical. When is compromise useful?
It's very practical when time is severely limited and you just need a solution, even if it's not perfect. Or when the resources you're dividing are truly finite and indivisible, like maybe a fixed budget amount. It can feel fair in the moment.
But I sense another but.
There is another but. The main drawback of compromising is that it often leads to somewhat superficial or suboptimal solutions. Why? Because it typically focuses on splitting the difference between the positions, remember those, the surface demands, rather than digging deeper to explore and satisfy the underlying interests or needs.
Ah, so the root cause might still be there.
Exactly. The root cause of the conflict often remains unresolved, just sort of papered over, waiting to resurface later because the core needs weren't fully addressed. It's often a quick fix, not a deep solution.
Which brings us finally to the fifth style.
Yeah.
The one you said is the ideal for fair fighting.
Yes. Finally, we arrive at collaborating. This style is the holy grail, really. It's high on assertiveness and high on cooperativeness. High focus on self and high focus on the other.
The win-win.
That's the motto. I win, you win. This involves both parties committing to working together, digging deep to understand both sets of underlying needs and concerns, and then creatively finding an integrated solution that fully satisfies both sets of core interests.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Why wouldn't we just collaborate all the time?
Well, collaboration is definitely the ideal we strive for in fair fighting, especially for significant, high-stakes issues where a long-term, truly satisfying solution is paramount. Think major financial decisions, big parenting disagreements, deciding where to live, core relationship values.
The big stuff.
The big stuff. But we absolutely must acknowledge its primary cost. Collaboration is extremely demanding.
Demanding how?
It requires significant time. It takes sustained energy and focus. It demands a high degree of mutual trust and vulnerability from both parties. You both have to be psychologically open and willing to explore creative options. You are essentially investing heavily upfront to achieve a true, lasting win-win outcome rather than settling for a quicker partial win or a compromise.
So the big takeaway here isn't necessarily that collaboration is the only good style.
Right. Not at all. The takeaway is that we need to develop self-awareness about our own default style, understand the pros and cons of all 5 styles, and then develop the flexibility to consciously choose the most appropriate style for the specific situation.
So if we're fighting over, I don't know, which movie to watch tonight, maybe compromising or even accommodating is perfectly fine. It's low stakes.
Exactly. Probably not worth the energy of a full collaborative deep dive.
But if it's about a core need, like feeling respected or a major life decision, then we need to recognize that, slow down, and really commit the time and energy required for collaboration.
Precisely. It's about matching the strategy to the situation.
Okay, this feels critical. Everything we've discussed so far, like, the I statements, the gentle startups, even choosing the right conflict style, it all kind of goes out the window if we can't manage our own bodies in the heat of the moment.
Right. Absolutely. This is where the rubber meets the road. The physiological reality is stark. Failure to manage conflict constructively often stems directly from a failure to manage the body's powerful, primitive stress response. You can have the best intentions and the best scripts, but if your body takes over, you're sunk.
Which brings us back to that term you used earlier, emotional flowing. Can you define this physiological hijacking for us? Again, maybe in a bit more detail.
Sure. Flooding is basically when your sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, completely takes over. There's a surge of stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, flooding your bloodstream.
What does that actually do to you?
Well, physically, your heart rate spikes, often exceeding 100 beats per minute. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Blood rushes away from your core and into your limbs, literally preparing you to fight or run. But crucially, psychologically, the blood flow decreases to your prefrontal cortex.
The thinking part of the brain.
The thinking, reasoning, planning part. The part responsible for rational thought, empathy, impulse control, considering consequences, understanding nuance. Basically, everything you need for constructive conversation. It literally goes offline. Problem solving becomes physiologically impossible.
So when you're flooded, you're not really engaging with your partner anymore.
No. Your brain has switched modes. You are essentially engaging with what your primitive brain perceives as a threat, a predator. Logic is out the window. Survival instinct is in the driver's seat.
Recognizing the warning signs, then, has to be step one. What are those specific physical cues we should be looking for, either in ourselves or maybe noticing in our partner?
The physical signals are usually pretty unmistakable once you learn to tune in yourself.
Hmm.
That racing heart, the rapid, shallow breathing, maybe feeling flushed or hot in the face or neck, muscles tensing up, shoulders, jaw, fists, sometimes tunnel vision, an inability to truly focus on or process what your partner is saying, and almost always a sharp, raised voice tone.
And if you see those signs in your partner,
Similar things, the flushed face, the tension, the raised voice, maybe they look like a deer in headlights, unable to respond coherently, or they start withdrawing, shutting down. If you see or feel any of these signs strongly, in yourself or them, you have passed the point of productive dialogue. Continuing the conversation in that state will almost certainly cause more damage.
okay, so flooding is happening, damage is imminent. What's the strategic response?
The essential tool here is the strategic timeout protocol. This is not about avoidance in the negative sense. It's about interrupting the destructive physiological cycle. But, and this is vital, it must be pre-planned and mutually agreed upon during a calm time. It cannot feel like a punishment or like storming out.
Right, not just yelling, "I'm out of here," and slamming the door.
Definitely not. The implementation needs to be rigorously structured. Step 1. Agree on the rules in advance. During a calm, low-stress period, you sit down together and discuss the procedure. What's the signal word or gesture for needing a timeout? What's the minimum time duration? Where will you go during the break? What's the plan for re-engaging?
Planning for the fire drill before the fire starts.
Excellent analogy. Step 2. Call the timeout. When one person recognizes they, or their partner, is flooded, they use the pre-agreed signal. Something functional and non-blaming, like, okay, I need to take a timeout right now, I'm feeling flooded and I need 20 minutes to calm down so I don't say something I regret. Crucially, this call for a timeout is generally considered a unilateral, non-negotiable act of self-regulation. The other person needs to respect it immediately.
No arguing about whether the timeout is needed.
Ideally, no. The person feeling flooded is the only one who truly knows their internal state. Arguing about it just escalates the flooding. Okay, step 3. State the time frame. We keep mentioning this 20-minute minimum. Why is it so essential that the break has a specific, agreed-upon duration and you actually stick to it? Why can't you just come back when you feel like it? Or in 10 minutes if you feel calmer? 2 key reasons for the specificity. First, an indefinite break feels like emotional abandonment or punishment to the partner left behind. Saying, "I'll be back in 30 minutes at 7:30 provides crucial reassurance and predictability. Second, the duration itself. As we discussed, the research is unequivocal. It takes at least 20 minutes, often more like 30, for the physiological effects of cortisol and adrenaline to noticeably metabolize and clear from your system.
So returning after just 10 minutes.
Means your rational brain is likely still offline. You're still physiologically primed for conflict, and you'll probably just reignite the fire instantly. You need that full biological reset time.
Okay. Step 4. Disengage completely. Physically separate. Don't stay in the same room glaring at each other.
Right. Go to different neutral spaces if possible. And here's the critical, often violated instruction during the break. You must use the time for calming, not for ruminating.
What does ruminating look like?
It looks like replaying the argument in your head, listing all the ways your partner was wrong, planning your next attack, drafting angry texts you thankfully don't send, anything that keeps your mind focused on the conflict. Ruminating actually keeps your body in that state of high arousal. It defeats the purpose of the break.
So what should you be doing? That's step 5. Self-soothe.
Yes. Engage in active, conscious distraction and calming activities. The best ones physiologically involve stimulating the vagus nerve, which helps shift your body from the sympathetic fight-flight state back to the parasympathetic rest-digest state. Slow, deep diaphragmatic breathing is number 1. Long exhales are key. Going for a brisk walk, listening to calming music, splashing cold water on your face, doing some gentle stretching, engaging in a simple, absorbing, non-stressful task like a puzzle, or reading something light. Anything that takes your mind completely off the conflict and calms your nervous system.
Okay. And finally, after the agreed time is up, step 6. Re-engage.
Yes. Check back in with your partner at the agreed time. If you find you're still feeling overwhelmed or flooded, be honest about it. Say, I need a bit more time. Can we take another 15 minutes? And agree on a new specific interval.
And maybe ease back in.
Absolutely. The sources suggest that successful couples often use a small, maybe nonverbal repair attempt right upon re-engagement. A quick hug, a gentle touch on the arm, a soft apology like, hey, I'm sorry that escalated so much. Just something small to signal that the immediate crisis is over and you're trying to reconnect before diving back into the topic itself. It helps reassure the bond.
That whole protocol sounds incredibly useful. Beyond the full timeout, are there smaller, in-the-moment de-escalation techniques we can use if things start heating up but maybe aren't full-blown flooding yet?
Yes, definitely. For managing yourself, if you can't take a full break, consciously force that slow, deep breathing. Try to practice mindfulness, just observing the rising emotion, okay, anger is here, without necessarily reacting from it, and actively control your nonverbal cues. Deliberately lower your voice volume, uncross your arms, soften your facial expression. Your body language signals safety or threat.
And what if your partner is the one escalating? Can you help them de-escalate?
You often can. Using immediate validation is very powerful. Even if you're feeling upset yourself, saying something like, wow, I can see how upsetting this is for you, or it really sounds like you felt X and that makes sense, can sometimes take the wind out of their sails. It shows you're trying to listen, which can reduce the intensity of their anger or hurt.
And using collaborative language.
Yes, immediately frame it as teamwork. Phrases like, okay, how can we figure this out, or let's try to work on this together, shifts the dynamic from adversaries back to partners facing a shared problem. Okay, so we have built the foundational pillars of safety. We've learned to recognize and counteract the destructive four horsemen. We understand different conflict styles. And we have tools for managing emotional flooding and de-escalating in the moment. Now, we need to synthesize all of this into the final structure. A practical 5-step blueprint for actually negotiating a resolution.
This sounds like where we actually solve the problem.
Exactly. This structure is what shifts the dynamic from that chaotic, emotionally driven exchange we often fall into something more like a productive collaborative project with clear steps.
Okay, step 1.
Step 1, set the stage for success. This is all about logistics and preparation before you even dive into the issue itself. First aspect, timing and consent.
Don't ambush your partner.
Please don't. Initiate these important conversations by mutual agreement. Find a time when both partners are relatively rested, fed, and calm. Avoid starting heavy discussions late at night, right before work, or the second they walk in the door from a stressful day. Ask, hey, is now a good time to talk about X, or should we find another time?
Okay, and the second part is setting the stage.
Establish the ground rules. Before you even state the topic of the conflict, briefly reaffirm your shared commitment to the fair fighting principles. It could be as simple as a quick check-in. Okay, before we start, let's just remember we're going to try really hard to use I statements, and we agree we'll take a timeout if either of us starts feeling flooded. Deal.
Why do that every time?
Because it immediately establishes psychological safety.
Yeah.
It frames the upcoming discussion as a collaborative effort guided by shared rules rather than a personal attack. It puts the agreed-upon process above the individual personalities and emotions involved.
Got it. Okay, stage set. Step 2.
Step 2. Understand and define the conflict. This is where you have to do some digging. You need to get beneath the surface issue, the presenting problem, like the forgotten errand or the dirty dishes, to uncover the real issue.
Which is usually about?
It's almost always about an underlying unmet need or a deeper feeling. The core issue driving the conflict might be a feeling of being disrespected, or unimportant, or maybe insecure, or perhaps feeling like you're carrying an unfair burden in the relationship. You have to figure out what the fight is really about for both people.
And this is where that crucial distinction comes in again, right? Between interests and positions.
Exactly. Nailing this difference is basically the entire engine that drives collaborative resolution. Let's use that classic example again. A couple arguing over where to spend the holidays.
Okay, their position, that's their specific demand, right?
Right. The position might be, we absolutely have to spend Christmas Eve with my family in the city, and then we can spend Christmas Day with your family out in the suburbs. That's a rigid, specific demand.
Okay, so what's the interest underneath that position?
The interest is the underlying need, value, or motivation driving that specific demand. For the person wanting Christmas Eve in the city, the interest might be, it's incredibly important for me to feel connected to my family traditions, especially going to midnight mass together, which only happens on the eve. For the other person wanting Christmas Day in the suburbs, the interest might be, My parents are getting older, and I have a deep need to show them they are a priority by spending the main holiday day with them.
Ah, I see. So positions often conflict directly. Only one person can win that specific schedule. But interests.
Interests are usually broader, more flexible, and often, surprisingly, not mutually exclusive. If you only argue about the positions, Christmas Eve here, Christmas Day there, you're stuck. You probably have to compromise, which means someone inevitably loses something important, breeding resentment. But if you shift the conversation to focus on the underlying interests,
Then you can get creative.
exactly, you open up the possibility for collaboration. In that holiday example, if the wife's core interest is honoring the midnight mass tradition, and the husband's core interest is showing priority to elderly parents on the main day, the solution isn't necessarily splitting the days rigidly.
What might it be?
It might be something totally different that satisfies both core needs.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay, what if we honor your tradition by us going to midnight mass together, just here in our own town this year, really focusing on that ritual, and then we dedicate the entire Christmas day, no rushing, to driving to your parents and spending quality time, ensuring they feel completely prioritized. See? That potential solution honors both underlying interests without getting stuck on the initial conflicting positions.
Wow. That is powerful. Shifting from arguing who wins the position to how can we both get our underlying needs met?
That's the essence of collaborative problem solving, which leads us directly into step 3, brainstorm possible resolutions collaboratively. Once both sets of underlying interests are clearly identified and understood, you shift fully into that team mindset. Okay, it's us versus this problem. How can we solve it together?
And the key here is no judgment yet.
Absolutely critical. This stage is about quantity over quality. Generate as many potential solutions as you possibly can without criticizing or evaluating them immediately. Even seemingly ridiculous ideas should be welcome because sometimes a silly idea can spark a genuinely functional one.
What's the guiding question during this brainstorming?
The central question should always be something like, okay, based on our shared understanding of both our important underlying interests, things like connection, security, tradition, respect, fairness, what are all the possible ways we could move forward from here? How could we potentially meet both sets of needs?
Get it all out on the table first. Go step 4.
Step 4. Choose the best resolution and create an action plan. Now you look at that list of brainstormed ideas together. You evaluate them based on how well they actually address both partners' core interests that you identified earlier. You select the solution, or maybe a combination of ideas, that seems likely to best meet the majority of both partners' crucial needs.
Does this sometimes still require compromise?
It might, yes. Sometimes there isn't a perfect, everyone gets a 100% solution. But it's a compromise reached after a thorough exploration of all the high-value options that protect the core interests, not just a superficial splitting of positions from the start.
And then comes the action plan part.
Yeah.
Specificity again.
Always specificity. A vague agreement to, say, be more organized about finances or be more present with each other is pretty much useless because it's not measurable and easily forgotten. You must translate the chosen solution into a clear, concrete, actionable plan.
Like what? Give an example.
Okay, if the agreement is to be more organized with finances, the action plan might be, okay, so by Friday, I will research and sign us up for that budget tracking app we talked about. And we commit to spending 20 minutes every Sunday evening together reviewing the week's spending and planning for the next week. Or for be more present, we commit to putting our phones away in a designated basket during dinner every single night starting tonight. Define specifically who will do what, by when, and how you'll know it's happening.
Makes it real and accountable. Okay, final step. Step 5.
Finally, step 5, repair and reconnect. This is crucial. Conflict, even when it's resolved successfully using all these steps, still creates some emotional distance or friction. You have to intentionally close that gap afterwards.
And the key tool here is the repair attempt.
Yes. Gottman emphasizes this constantly. Successful couples make and accept repair attempts frequently, both during and after conflict. It could be a sincere, even partial apology for your role in the escalation. Look, I'm really sorry I raised my voice earlier. It could be an affectionate touch, a shared moment of gentle humor about the argument now that it's over, or just expressing understanding.
What does the repair attempt signal?
It signals the conflict part is over now. The bond between us is still safe and more important. It's about reaffirming the connection over the disagreement.
The sources also recommend something called a post-conflict debrief.
Yes, this is highly recommended, but maybe not immediately after. Perhaps the next day when the emotional intensity is completely gone. You briefly discuss the process of the conflict itself, not the content again. Ask each other things like, what communication strategy felt helpful this time? Was there anything I did or said that felt particularly hurtful or unhelpful?
Learning from the experience.
Exactly. This meta-communication, talking about how you talk, is how you continuously learn, improve your shared process, and build your relationship's resilience over time.
And the very final act.
The final act is simply to reaffirm the bond. Conclude the entire process, maybe later that day or the next, by expressing genuine appreciation and affection for your partner. It reinforces the core message. The conflict was temporary, the underlying connection remains secure, valuable, and worth fighting fairly for.
Wow. Okay, so these fair fighting principles we've walked through today, they really do provide a robust, almost like a structural architecture for building relational resilience, don't they?
They really do. When you use them consistently, they transform conflict from being this frightening threat that you want to avoid at all costs
Right.
into a necessary, maybe uncomfortable, but ultimately repeated opportunity. An opportunity to understand your partner more deeply, to understand yourself more deeply, and to collaboratively solve life's inevitable problems in a way that actually strengthens the foundation of your relationship.
But it's not magic. It requires practice.
Oh, absolutely. It requires consistent, deliberate practice. It requires self-awareness to catch yourself falling into old patterns. And it requires a deep, shared commitment to the well-being of the relationship itself, above the need to win any single argument. By consistently choosing to replace that knee-jerk criticism with a gentle startup, or defensiveness with taking a bit of responsibility, or stonewalling with taking that structured break, you are fundamentally reprogramming your relationship's operating system over time.
And the ultimate takeaway here, the big payoff, seems to be about intimacy.
I think that's exactly right. Every single disagreement that you manage to navigate successfully using these principles reinforces a profound, reassuring truth. That your relationship is strong enough, it's resilient enough to handle life's inevitable challenges and disagreements. Each time you resolve conflict fairly without resorting to those destructive patterns, you rebuild trust, you deepen security, and that process leads, maybe slowly but surely, towards greater emotional intimacy. You learn you can handle tough things together.
That's a powerful reframe. Conflict as a path to intimacy, not away from it.
When done right, yes. And maybe here's a provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider as we wrap up. While these tools we've discussed today are incredibly powerful and they are entirely within your grasp to learn and practice, it is also a sign of profound wisdom and real strength, not weakness, to recognize when conflict patterns in your relationship might be too deeply entrenched, maybe too historical or just too painful for you to resolve entirely on your own using these tools alone.
So knowing when to ask for help.
Exactly. Seeking the guidance of a trained couples therapist or a counselor doesn't mean failure. It offers a safe, neutral, supportive space where you can both practice and integrate these fair fighting skills with expert feedback. It can help ensure that your path toward building that more secure, more collaborative connection is fully supported, especially if you're dealing with years of built-up resentment or particularly damaging patterns like contempt.
That's a really important point. It's okay to need a guide sometimes. Well, that's it for this deep dive into healthy conflict resolution. We really hope this blueprint gives you the confidence and the tools to maybe turn your next disagreement into a building exercise, not a demolition derby.
Practice gently. Be patient with yourselves and each other. We'll see you next time.
Your tools. It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide you through. It's the choice to find your way. Starting here, starting today.
And that brings us to the end of our episode on fair fighting. I hope you now see that conflict, when handled with respect and these rules of engagement, doesn't have to be destructive. It can actually be a path to understanding each other better. We have covered a massive amount of ground this season. So, join me next week for our final episode of the season, a complete recap of the communication blueprint. We are going to take every tool we've learned attachment styles, active listening, boundaries, and fair fighting, and tie them all together into a single, cohesive strategy. If you're finding this new season valuable, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that recap. And if you'd like to support the show, all the information for our donation link is in the show notes. As always, you can find all resources at Your Journey, yourtools.com, and the app at Your Journey, yourtools.app. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on your journey.